Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. This is another attempt at making episode 10. My dry erase board's off to the side. I've almost given up on using it for right now. This has turned out to be a very tricky video to make. The topic was brought up by a viewer, and he asked if I could talk about finances and marriage, meaning that when you get married, what are the changes that occur with finances? So I think that it is such a broad topic that you can't talk about just the financial side without talking about the marriage side, and it has become very tricky. I've tried filming this video probably 5 or 6 times and got about 20 minutes in. So I'm pretty far into it. Forgive me if I sound a little bummed right now, but I'll get excited again. I might look up at my board over here every once in a while, and I've got a piece of paper here that me and my wife kind of worked on. She helped me out. May include her in on some of the videos in the future where I think having that extra person in talking about it, giving that different perspective, may help. Before we get started, thank you to all of you people who bullfrogged me on that last video. I was very impressed by how many people watched that whole thing. If you haven't seen it, I contrasted a job versus passive income, and the video was an hour and 10 minutes long, I believe, and many people watched all the way to the end and claimed they enjoyed it. I also ran ads on that video. Didn't get any negative comments on that. You're watching a financially based channel, so why wouldn't I run those ads on there? But I'm going to try to get them to fit in a little more naturally. Every once in a while you might see me look up at the timer. I might say we're going to go ahead and pause for a second for an ad and then run that ad. So that's all through YouTube and stuff. What else? I think was that it? I think so. If I want to say anything else, I'll just bring it up. Again, the topic is talking about marriage and finances. So for me to break this down, it's a little tricky. I'll say things throughout this video that may sound like I'm got a strong opinion on something, but most of it I'm just bringing up the points, and then people can kind of reflect on how they may affect their situation. I'm assuming that the person asking this, they may have just said that would be interesting to hear about, but it could be a person who has a big decision that they're trying to make of whether or not they want to get married in general, whether the person they're thinking about in a relationship with is the right person to get married to. And then finances are a huge part of life in general. And now all of a sudden you're going to take a topic that a lot of people don't know a lot about, or, whatever the case is. You're going to take a semi-complicated topic, and all of a sudden two people that have lived most of their life, not sharing the same brain, are all of a sudden going to have to basically share the same brain. So that can be really tricky. Luckily, I am married, for those of you who don't know that. That has been a very smooth transition for my wife and I. We're very kind of similar to this, and it's not all because we have excellent communication. It's just because we were a good match in that area. And I think it is a very good area to be well matched in. On the top of my piece of paper and on the top of my dry erase board over here, I wrote, "It's the biggest financial decision you'll ever make." And then on my paper, I wrote, "Getting married strictly for love is a mistake." So that may sound kind of cold to you romantics out there, but there's a lot of romantics that are divorced. The divorce rate is very high, and I think a lot of people who get divorced 100% loved each other when they got married, and probably a lot of them love each other even after they've gotten divorced, but they didn't have the right something in their marriage to kind of hold it together, and mistakes can be made. People do crazy stuff, and some of those are financially based. I know different people who finances have played a big role in unhappiness in the marriage, and I can definitely see why. I'm a person who has strong opinions and certain goals, and the financial side of things make a big difference. With that said, my wife can buy whatever she wants. It doesn't bother me. I'm saying that from the perspective, though, of knowing that she's a lot like me, and she's not going to just go out and buy a bunch of stuff. If she started doing it, I would see it as some sort of a sign as there's something going on. So I think making sure you're paired up with somebody, it makes you not kind of even really question what they're going to do and think, because it's almost like they're coming from the same perspective as you. And you don't want to micromanage somebody, to the max. That could cause a lot of problems too. A cheapskate's not a fun person. So I jokingly call myself a cheapskate, but in reality, I don't think I'm really a cheapskate. I kind of am in certain ways. You see me up in a store just rocking back and forth, not wanting to spend a dime. And then I'll go and in a heartbeat, I'll spend several $1,000s on something that some people would never buy in their whole life. But I've thought about it. It makes sense. It's what I want to do. And I've set up stuff to make the money. I'm referring to like some tool or something. And then on rare occasion, I'll just buy something because I want it for no reason. And my wife, she can do the same thing. But again, it's coming from this perspective of knowing that it's not something that's out of control, and it's at least been thought of, and it's spaced out and all that kind of stuff. So, where are we at? I just talked about the biggest decision ever. That can go both ways. You can, marry somebody, and then together you're basically like partners, and you support each other, help each other. And it could just be somebody just being happy for you, and you've got this goal, and just the feel-good aspect of them being happy for you, giving you those pats on the back, could be that thing that keeps you going forward. So with me, it is. My wife is happy with what I do. She shows up at the houses I'm working on. She says how good of a job I'm doing. She'll just thank me for doing it. She'll say, thank you for working so hard for the family. And, it sounds so small, but that type of a thing, and all that, again, coming from us, coming from that same point of view. She sees what I'm doing. She sees the value in it. She can see why I'm doing it. And I've said it before, you're seeing the YouTube version of what I'm doing. The truth is, a lot of times the house is about 90, 95 degrees in the summer. It's full of mosquitoes, bees. It's hard work. It's expensive. So it's not a YouTube video when I'm in the house working. She knows that. So, I'm not in there just doing it, having fun. So having that full-on support, and then also the responsibility. I've got that financial responsibility of paying for the household. And it's a weird thing, I think, once you get married and start to grow your family. It's almost like you enjoy it. One thing that I thought about lately is there's going to be certain costs that a family endures. Like, I say endures, that sounded bad. Like, say you buy your child a bicycle. It could be $75, $100, however much the bike is, and it might not be a good time for you financially speaking, but you want to do it because you want to do that for your child. You want to be the one that buys them their first bicycle, that type of a thing. And certain aspects like that, you won't understand until you kind of, I think, do them, but you can probably relate it to something else. Why was I mentioning that? I don't even know. Oh, yeah. That type of stuff keeps me motivated. And that was one thing that I was personally worried about before I got married, was the extra responsibility, time and money. But it was funny. It was the responsibility is what made me feel more motivated, and then I did better. And I think that's that whole thing. You rise to the occasion. If you hand somebody as much money as they need, they might not do anything if you're just handing them to them. But if you deprive a person of something, they'll usually figure out how to get it. And so that can be very motivating, having a certain level of responsibility. But that's a hard thing to, depending on, I'm a person who's adverse to responsibility naturally, I think. I think it comes from a good place in me, though. I don't want to take on something that I'm going to let that down, whether that be a person or a group you're working with or whatever. I just like to have the least amount of responsibility as possible. Not saying that I'm trying to be lazy and get out of responsibilities. I just don't want to take on more than I want to, can, or should. Let's see. The way I've been filming these videos, I've been trying to go by this list real carefully, and it hadn't been going very good, but I like the direction I'm going more so right now, so I might not try to follow this as closely. So if you're a person and you're thinking about getting married and you're thinking about that financial aspect, you're really going to have to ask yourself, I think, all of the same questions, even if the finances weren't the reason for asking them. But a lot of it is financial. I'm looking at my paper here. I'm trying to kind of put it together in my head as I'm talking. But like looking at the person and kind of just getting a general feel for their habits. Do they go? Are they spending crazy? Do they have a lot of debt? What are their future goals, and how do those goals and those habits kind of align with yours? Because a lot of times, the things that will drive you the craziest, they might not really be all that big of a deal, but daily, somebody's little quirk that, when you're dating them and getting to know them, you're like, oh, that's so cute. And then you're married and you're sitting over there going, that type of thing can develop. So you do want to start off with the best chance as possible. Because getting married, staying married, getting married is easy. Staying married, I'm not going to say it's hard. Me and my wife have a great thing. We've never even really been in what I would consider a real argument. Sometimes I make her upset, and it's really about the gist of it. I get her upset, and then every once in a while I get annoyed. That would be the two things that happens with us. But other than that, we have a pretty friction-free marriage. So let me just go over some of my list, and then I'll just kind of come off the list if I think of something I want to say. What is that person used to? So if you're looking at your potential spouse, what lifestyle have they lived? What are they used to? And how are those experiences going to translate into their feelings about you? And really, you should kind of think about that in reverse, and how they're going to take you. How you're going to take them. You know what I'm saying? Just reverse the thing both ways. This isn't just about the other person every time. For me, how that would relate is my father-in-law. He's a plumber, but he's a plumber that invested his money that he was making from being a plumber, self-employed plumber, into real estate. And he got into doing rentals. So that may sound like never mind, I'm going to get off topic, forget to go there. So that's what he did. I had this interest, it was developing in me, and then me and my wife were getting to know each other better in college. And so you can imagine, I started selling my farm tables once I got out of college, and then I was getting into the real estate since I was out of school and I was back home. I bought my first house, and that was back when we had just started dating. That's not really that far of a stretch for her. Her father, her male figure in her life was a self-employed tradesman. It's basically what I am. I'm a woodworker making tables and selling them to customers, and then I'm renovating houses. Versus if a girl, if her father was a banker, or just a traditional thing, or just a guy who works at a factory, whatever the situation, just something that doesn't translate easy over to whatever it is you are or are going to be. And that may sound like an odd one, but I really think that makes a difference. It's like a cultural thing more so than just an opinion that this person has about you. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. This is next one's pretty much strictly financial. What's your housing and living condition? So if you're a fella and you're living in a house with 5 guys splitting the rent, and you don't use any electricity and all this kind of stuff, and you barely use any water, whatever it is, you're just living like a bunch of ratty dudes, and all of a sudden you go and you marry a nice, clean, good old-fashioned average girl, she's not going to want to live in the rat hole with you, so you're going to have to go somewhere else. And, say she's still in school or something like that, well, all of a sudden you're going to be fully responsible for the full amount of rent, and it's just there's no dividing it up. Or even if there is dividing it up, say it's half, or you're paying the majority, whatever that is. So that type of thing can be really significant. I think a lot of people, they get the rose-colored glasses, and then they just ignore so many things, or they go, well, we'll figure it out. You might be going right back to the same place you got your marriage license if you try to go that route. But with I think with that housing and living conditions, kind of consider the whole lifestyle. That's probably the easiest way for me to sum up all this. Consider that person's lifestyle, and is there going to be a transition to get used to being living with that person? Because even if things are perfectly matched, there's going to be some transition. It's funny, while I'm talking, I'm like trying to think about my wife and I when we got married, and then in our case, we didn't live together beforehand. We did everything in the very traditional order of things, which I won't try to push that on people too hard, but I do think that there's a reason that those things are called the traditional ways of doing stuff. It's like, when it comes to those traditions, everybody wants to tie religion to them and certain sets of morals and all that kind of stuff. But like if you talk about woodworking, call it traditional woodworking, it's all admired and all this kind of stuff. And traditional means different things, of course, depending on what the culture is. But in our case, just went at things the good old-fashioned American traditional way of we dated, we went to school, we dated, then we got married, then we had a baby. So sorry if I sound like I'm uncomfortable talking about some of the personal stuff. I'm not big on doing that, but I think the context of it and kind of like where you're coming from on all this, it just sounds like you're preaching to us. But that's what I've done, and it's worked out in my case, I think, very well. I'm happy with the way everything has gone, and it has, I think, kept us out of taking on certain responsibilities before we were mentally and financially, just before you're ready, and making things, always setting yourself up in the best kind of position to take on the next phase. Because again, even when things are all right, it's still going to be tricky. I think a lot of people mistaken things sometimes, that when things work out for people, it's because it was easy. It might be because it was harder, because they put in a lot of work. Children expectations. The person you're about to get married to, do they want to have kids? Because if you want to and they don't, and you don't talk about that ahead of time, that could be an issue. Or if it's flipped. Or does the person want to have 2 or 3 kids, or 5 or 10, whatever it is. All those are going to have a financial impact on you. And again, we're talking about finances here, so don't think that this is supposed to be a romantic time. Where do you live? Reason I'm saying this is say that you and your wife, like I did, we met in college. Well, oftentimes people who meet each other in college don't live in the same place. They're at least, usually a couple hours apart, or they could, live states apart. In my case, my wife did not live, she lived above where I went to school, and I lived way over from where we went to school. And so she ended up moving to me, because I was kind of, starting my stuff in real estate, and I can't just pick that stuff up and leave, but she could come here and get a job. So that's kind of how things went for us. And of course, I was happy with it going that way, because this is where I'm familiar with. But you need to kind of look at your situation and what do you think's the best fit. And because in your case, that may be a sacrifice that you're going to have to make. For me, I feel like I just only gained stuff. I was here in an area that I was familiar with. I wanted to be here. I'm buying these cheap houses, and then I get a girl, comes from way off, follows me here. So, for me, it's all pluses. And of course, she's getting a lot out of it too, and she's really grown to like where we are, and she really identifies with it as home now. But I'm sure at first, the proximity to family, just knowing where you're going, driving around, all those types of things, that's an impact. And it's something that I probably did take it for granted back when it was happening, or I don't say I disregarded it, but it was just something I just wasn't focused on that much. Let's see, we've been going for 19 minutes. Let me go ahead and run one of these commercial breaks. I apologize, but we're going to do it now versus it cutting me off mid-sentence. All right, we're back. I hope that was a smooth transition. Where were we at? We were doing the location. So that one, we're done with that one. Current financial responsibilities. That could be paying off student loans, car loans, houses, whatever it is. Consider what that person has financially, their financial responsibilities every month, and that could range, who knows what. That's just going to be, each situation. Legal financial liabilities, not responsibilities, liabilities. And I don't have a whole lot I've kind of thought of on this one, but is it a person that's likely to get sued? Are they in the middle of a lawsuit? just whatever the situation is, if it applies to you, it applies to you. But just think about that type of a thing. Like in my case, I rent houses, so like technically that's someone could end up in a lawsuit over something happening. The financial liabilities of having all that real estate, I mean, it exists to some degree. So that's something that someone may want to consider. Sorry, I don't have good examples. That's not even that good of an example, really. But another one, and I think this goes both ways. I'm saying all this like I'm talking about, watch out for them ladies. But I'm a guy, and this is the perspective I came from. What's the person's consistency and their track record and their kind of follow through? Meaning, like you're looking at this person, they're real solid at that moment. But, have they been solid for a while? Have they shown consistency? Do they have, when they went to school, did they drop out? Did they stick with the same program? Just do they have follow through? Because, your marriage vows kind of lay it out, and that's sort of for sickness and health and all that kind of stuff. It's basically just saying that this ain't going to be perfect, and you got to stick through it anyway. So it's good to kind of see what somebody's follow through before this. Because just walking down that aisle, as meaningful as it seems right when it's happening, and it's all just, you think you're the most special thing in the world, and the whole wedding and the honeymoon afterwards, that will end. Everything becomes normal at some point, and then you have to live together. And there's always going to be some level of ups and downs. Sometimes it's minor, sometimes it can be major. For me and my wife, we really do have a great thing. That's the biggest thing that I'm thinking. Sometimes I'm like reading this stuff and talking while I'm trying to think of the next thing, and the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking about how good of a situation I have personally, just in general, but just with this financial stuff and how much support that I have from her doing the stuff that I'm doing. And that doesn't mean she's down there swinging a hammer, or she's not a sugar mama or anything like that. She's just got my back with all this kind of stuff. And like I said, we just spent an hour after she does so much work you wouldn't believe it. And when she's tired and probably wanted to go to sleep, she sat upstairs and we went over all these different things, and we're up there just talking about this type of stuff. So it might sound like I'm some not fun dude, but it was both of us talking about this stuff and coming up with it and just being realistic about stuff. Not stuff that you don't talk about this, with your fiance the night before you get married. This is stuff you want to kind of get to know each other. That's probably the biggest thing. You just get to know each other and take your time. I think a lot of people get married too soon, but at the same time, there's a saying about getting off the pot. You don't want to waste somebody's time either. I think especially a guy, a woman that wants to have babies and all that kind of stuff. There's her most fertile years, and it's not just about fertility, it's about the safety of it all and making sure that it goes well, and that everybody has the best chance of being happy and healthy, or healthy and happy. Let me move on. I feel like I'm getting boring. Let's see, consistency, track record. Self-evaluation. I'm going to do that one in a second. Spouse's influence. Is the person that some people are way more influential than others. I feel like I'm not that influential. I mean, easily influenced, meaning that what other people do. Got my hair cut today, as many of you will notice. And when I was in there, she was cutting my hair up, and it was starting to look like something you could point at in a magazine, and that's what I eventually told her. I said, look, I said, I don't mean, I said, you're doing a fine job and all. I said, but I said, I don't want to, look like somebody could point at my haircut in a magazine. I said, I just want to blend in. I said, just cut it normal to where when I walk out of here, it doesn't look like I just had a haircut if somebody doesn't know me. I said, I don't want to look like, want to look like this certain person. And it was funny because right when I said that, the guy in the seat next to me was like, the woman asked him if he wanted the same haircut he got last time, and he had a smartphone out showing her a picture of an actor. And I just thought that was funny because I just out loud said the opposite of that. Sorry, that sounded a smug or something, but just meaning that what other people are doing. I've just got my own stuff going on. I don't care if somebody buys a new car. I see that, and the first thing I think, a lot of times when I see somebody that's driving a $40,000 thing, I translate that into, a man, I could buy and renovate 2 houses for as much as he just spent. And then I think of it as like what that income, what that spending coming back to me would be. I'm like, that'd be $8,000 a year, or you know, maybe more than that. But so where was I even at? Are you going to marry somebody that once their friends, husbands start to make a bunch of money, are they going to start buying a bunch of stuff, and then your friend feel left out and her want to do the same thing? But maybe you're doing something like I'm doing, where you're reinvesting all your money so you don't have a bunch of nonsense money to spend on a bunch of silliness, and then that person be unhappy because they were influenced by seeing somebody else's lifestyle, wanting that lifestyle before it was time or before they were able to. So I think making sure that that person isn't that type of a person. But I think a lot of that would just tie back into getting to know the person and kind of like making sure that at least a certain amount of y'all's habits are in line with each other. Pets. This is one that probably makes some people mad. Pets are a big responsibility, time and financially speaking. I know somebody recently had to spend about $3,000 getting something taken out of a dog's stomach that it just swallowed. So $3,000. I have bought a house. One of my houses I bought was $2,000. So they spent more. I'm kind of exaggerating right there, but they basically spent $3,000, and I would spend it too if I had the dog. But you know, especially at certain times of your life, taking on pets as a financial responsibility and the time it's involved, it's anything that I mention in this stuff. Basically, what I'm saying is if you do it, you're going to have a certain amount of responsibility that you should live up to. So you can just choose not to do it. You don't need to be sentimental about the dog you don't own yet. So dogs, cats, whatever it is, a goldfish. But so, you know, if you're going to marry somebody and you've made the decision to not have a pet, and then all of a sudden you're going to marry somebody that does want the pet, and they're taking it and getting it groomed. Every time you go on a trip, you've got to put it in a kennel if you can't take it with you. You know, a dog breaks its leg, whatever it is. I don't know anybody who has animals that hasn't at some point in their life had something super serious and expensive happen. So it's just something to consider. I'm not going to say anything else about it. Continued education. Some people are like professional students. They just stay in school, and then they come out of school eventually, and there's the ongoing cost, and then there's that student loans that are just going to keep on going, and you know, all the mess that's going on now with it. Again, you should pay your own student loans back. But is the person that you're looking to be in a relationship with, just how is that going to play into everything? This is starting to sound like a little bit of a side note. Let me do this one first. Medical. Somebody could have a lot of medical stuff. Now, this sounds like I'm being a jerk, but let me get to the end before you think I'm being a jerk. Somebody has a lot of medical issues that could end up costing a lot. Say they maybe don't have as much earning potential, and you're basically going to be working your butt off just to pay their medical stuff. It's not that you don't want to maybe take care of the person, but you may not be in a position to take care of that person, and then by what's the term? Saddle? You could saddle them. I don't know how to phrase it, but basically, you might not be able to live up to the care that person needs. So I think that's kind of a major one, whether it be financially or just your endurance to keep up with this person, the in sickness and health part of it all. Yeah, I'll leave it at that to where I don't overtalk it. Life insurance. Then we're going back to one that I'm leaving out. Life insurance is probably a separate one. I'm mentioning life insurance because term life insurance, the earlier you get it, the cheaper it is. My suggestion is at some time, you know, probably in your 20s or whenever it is that you kind of roughly think that you get married, it might be a good time to go ahead and get the life insurance. And you might not want it now, but you're probably going to want it later. And even if you don't want it, you know, you should have it at some point. Once you start having dependents and people that are relying on you for stuff, all of a sudden, if you disappear out of the equation, you are going to, you could be, you know, you could leave them hanging. And so having life insurance, and what I suggest is you just get the most you can afford, the most you can qualify for, and have it on yourself minimally. And I think, I'm talking. You would think that sitting in a chair talking to a camera would be super simple, but it's not. Memory card got me, just like in the last video, and I think the battery's okay. We'll see how long everything holds out. I've got a huge memory card coming, but let's go ahead and just take a break real quick while I kind of get my head back in the game, and then we'll continue and try to polish this video off shortly. All right. We were on talking about the life insurance situation. All I'm saying is look into some term life insurance if you got people relying on you. If something happens and you get, you die, at least you've got something that can go to your family in that hard time and take care of all these needs, because a lot can fall apart when things get tough. So consider life insurance. If you get it while you're younger, 20-year, 30-year life insurance, whatever it is, term life insurance, you get it while you're young, and it will be cheap compared to what it's going to be later. You might think it seems like a lot of money you have to spend, but later on, when you wish you would have bought it earlier, it's going to be a whole lot more expensive. And it gets more expensive every single year. The amount that I pay in an entire year for my insurance is how much, somebody, not that much older in the scheme of things is paying every 3 months. So, look into it, talk to somebody, and choose what you think may be best for you, and do this before you actually think you need it, because, you might be in trouble if you think you need it. The last thing in this section that me and my wife kind of grouped as before you get married, and I'm sure there's going to be other things, but is self-evaluation. Everything I'm saying sounds like I'm pointing at the other person, saying, you got to watch out for them. But the truth is, you got to watch out for yourself in a lot of situations too. You can be going after the perfect girl, guys. You could be going after the perfect girl, but it may be you in the situation, and so make sure you got yourself together. It may mean you just need to have some self-improvement going on, but make sure you've got yourself together to where you can kind of it's just self-evaluation. What did we write? Your ability to endure, suffer through things. That was a joke. I told my wife, I said self-evaluation, and I said, you got to know yourself, your ability to endure and suffer through those hard times. And I just was saying all this stuff, and eventually I was just seeing how long it would take her to look up at me and go, "What are you talking about?" or roll her eyes. She just kept on writing, though. But she's immune to all my silliness at this point. Know yourself and know your shortcomings, know your strong points and all that kind of stuff, and consider that in making your decision. Because again, all this has to do with the financial stuff. I know this is probably people going, what is he talking about? Okay, where are we at? Male-female relationships. I don't know what that's about. Why we wrote that at the time. Wife's expectations of working, dual income when children show up. I think this is a big one. Say you got, sorry, we're not using the board anymore. Say you have a dual income and you're making $100,000, you're each making $50,000. Just make it nice and equal. And all of a sudden your wife has a baby. She's planning on going back to work. 2 months into it, she loves those little babies, or that one little baby, or whatever the situation is, or she's just way too tired to go back to work. And she says, I want to stay home and be a mother to these children. And then you're sitting there with your jaw dropped, realizing that half of your income could go away. Before you get married or when you get married, I think you need to start thinking of that kind of thing, because what somebody thinks they're going to do, and then the realities of after something occurs, you need to be ready for a situation. In my situation, what I did is I focused on the passive income, knowing that eventually this is what was going to happen to me. I knew that the kind of my wife is a very motherly type person. And I knew it was something she was going to enjoy, and I pretty much knew this is what she would want to be, stay at home anyway. And it's what I wanted. I didn't want to basically make the biggest decision to get married and then have children, and then send the kids off to somebody while I go off and my wife goes off and works with strangers all day long. I understand there's a lot of people probably watching these videos that's what they do or have to do, but I kind of, never mind, I won't say what I was about to say. I was about to say something that would make me look bad, not to make what someone else is doing look bad. But just be ready for that, consider it, and kind of like just what that other person's expectations are. And I think this would probably be one more, guys, considering the person they're going to marry, talking with them. And I think this is maybe one of those things, when I got married, I did, I don't know if it's called marriage counseling, but the preacher that married us, we went to, I don't know what they called him, but we met with him a bunch of times for like 2 months before we got married or something like that. I think it was once a week. And you just talked about different things like this. And this is nice because it was after you're engaged, but before you get married. So it's kind of like we can talk about some of these tougher things, but you're not married yet. If you're engaged to somebody and you find out that there's some sort of a big hiccup in there, it's certainly not too late to back out of things. And I think if you approach it the right way, it might not even be the worst thing in the world. Married, boyfriend, girlfriend, mixing financial stuff. I think that's what we were saying. My suggestion is to not get too many things mingled up before you get married. I just feel like that it's better, but you still need to be of a, make sure you've got a similar mindset when it comes to finances to the other person. That's the next thing I wrote down. Similar views on money. I think that explains itself. Now this next one, people are going to do this different ways, but I think that there's a huge benefit that you have to think of and think about it before you just judge this next statement. I think when you're married, you should think of it all as one money, meaning that my money's her money's my money. Now you can't be the person that's not worth a hoot and going, her money's my money, or his money is my money, but you don't do anything and you're just a taker basically. You're a burden on somebody. But I think when you've got people that have it's all mutual and you're working together and you consider it the family money, I think there's a lot of things that are going to translate into other benefits to the actual marriage as a whole, because again, you're these people, you've lived most of your life not with this person. All of a sudden now we got to figure out how we spend money and get through times where there's a little bit of money, then there's maybe more money. Big decisions like buying houses and cars and the children thing. If people, their money's totally separate, I almost don't even, when I was talking to my wife about this, she said, yeah, you're just roommates. And I thought that was a perfect thing to say. It's just you're like these people living together, but otherwise things are very separate. And I just don't understand that. It's kind of like, it's roommates. You just live in the house. There's going to, of course, be certain aspects that aren't the same as a roommate, but I think making sure that you marry the person that it is okay to have all your money pooled. Now I understand if you're in love with somebody, you've got all kinds of other stuff going on, but there's just like one reason that you just can't totally have that occur, or if you feel like you're going to end up divorced over something, but there's this good solution where the money stuff has to be done a little bit differently. I'm all for it. But in my wife and I's case, I think it's been a thing that's made us stronger. Because early on in our marriage, we had a dual income, and so we were able to pool money to do things that accelerated certain things. Most of like every dime I was basically making, I was shoving back into houses, and then we would basically live off of her income. But again, it was so small. Like our living costs are so small. Both of our incomes are very, very. I'd say hers was average, mine was below average, but again, it was because I still am dedicating the majority of my time to the stuff I'm doing on, but now, because I was able to focus on that stuff at that time, I had her support, I was able to do some of it before, get an okay amount of it established before we even got married, and kind of get over that hump of kind of getting it all put together. And this goes back to making sure you don't take on too many responsibilities, doing things in certain orders, have the children after you get married, not before. Not all of it is just because that's what the Bible says to do it, or someone's sense of morality says to do it. It's because if you delay having the children to after your marriage, there's the cost, the time, all that kind of stuff. I think that's one of the things you're going to see you need to guard the most in your life is going to be your time and how you spend it. And doing things in whatever order that you feel is best, I found at least it's been beneficial in my case. Hold on, where are we at? That's another one of those times where I feel uncomfortable talking about something. Support. Okay, this is what I should have wrote. We already wrote up under it. Married, one money, having it all be family money. Support a singular mindset, mutual decisions, communication, growing together, and then she wrote not roommates, which I thought was funny. So I guess that's all it. You're basically taking all this stuff and you're going to do it together. That makes you better versus having it be separate and kind of thinking of this person as being separate, having it be like it's private and all that kind of stuff. I don't even see how that works. I just think that's asking for trouble. And again, I think it comes back to when I see certain people that have, this is probably partly just me doing what I said earlier, is just when you see someone doing something different from you, that it can be frustrating, even if it has nothing to do with you. When I see people that are married, and I'm not saying any one of these things, but multiple of these things, I just ask myself, I just wonder why they're even married. Because it might not even look like they're having that great of it. They just look like roommates. Roommates that can be bored with each other or annoyed with each other. It's just strange. And I think all those situations probably would be better if people just, those things. Support a singular mindset, mutual decisions, communication, and grow together. People change so much. Getting married to a person. I've been married for about 4 years or so, and 50. Like these people have been married for 50 years. I mean, think how different you'd be after all that. And so I think you need to have as much stuff mutual as you can, even though it can be annoying and seem harder at the time. It keeps you kind of constantly doing that versus doing this as you go forward. I don't know if that was even meant anything, those hand gestures I just said. Taking advantage of each other's strong points. So this is ending the piece of paper, and I might touch on what's on my board up here. In the case of me and my wife, what this means is currently, I'll just describe it currently, I won't go back all the way. She is an extremely supportive person, so I get that support from her. Then I'm hardworking. I go out and do the hard working while she keeps supporting. Supporting me like mentally, not handing me money. Pardon me. She's also a person who is much more organized than me. So she is the one who takes the money that I make and she makes sure all the stuff is paid. All the insurances on the houses, all of the real estate tax, all that kind of stuff. The only financial stuff I do is the tax stuff in the end, because it's just, too unorganized to hand it over to somebody else to do. So I have to figure all that out and then go seek professional help. So she's paying the bills, and then I'll just read you what we wrote. That frees up my mind. I don't even like seeing it, so I don't like knowing how much our groceries cost. I don't like knowing how much our electricity bill is. I don't like knowing how much our water bill is, our phone bills, none of that stuff. I can figure out the answers. Anytime I want to, I can ask her, and she's got it all in a spreadsheet. I'm not a spreadsheet kind of person, but she keeps up with it all. And that's all done for tax reasons, because a lot of my expenses are write-offs. But I know those costs exist. There's nothing I can do about them. I can't make a lot of this stuff 1 cent cheaper, so I don't even want to think about it. And it's not some sort of thing like we're, budgeting. I've got, my budget is rock bottom is what it is, and every other dime goes back into what I'm doing. So in the case of us, she takes care of all that, and that's just time that I don't have to spend doing it, because it's very time consuming. When she sits down and she starts, licking envelopes and mailing off checks and paying all the stuff online, it looks like I've got a secretary in the kitchen. I mean, she's just going at it, and it's a big deal, and it's something she's doing. It's annual, it's every month, and then some things are coming mid-month. It's a lot of, anytime you get something going, it's just so much. I don't know what to. It's the administration part of it. I don't know if that was the right word. She's just taking care of business while I'm off working on the house, basically. And I like it. I like that she knows certain things. She sees these costs, but I don't have to actually focus on the stuff and get me riled up that we spent $50 on this or that. I don't even want to think about it. So that is it as far as that. So you can thank her for that. What are we at? We're at 30, 45 minutes or so right now in this video. It's getting pretty huge. But that was everything my wife and I talked about. Let me reposition this camera a wee bit. 2 for 1. Video's a little disjointed. I feel like I shouldn't even post it, but I'm going to do it anyway. 2 can live as cheaply as 1, or close enough. So then, when you enter in the idea of a dual income, that's powerful. I think a lot of people, what they should do is they should try to live on the least amount as possible and throw all that money at something that will benefit you down the road. Taxes. When you file your taxes, you can file, as an individual, or you can do a joint filing. With joint filings, you're going to get I'm blanking. It is almost 1 a.m. right now. The standard deduction is about $24,000 some dollars versus 12 some thousand. So your standard deduction is twice. So if it's a dual income and you get the standard deduction, really it's probably not much of an advantage. But in my case, I do joint. I file jointly with my wife, and she currently doesn't have any income. I still get that extra $12,000 off of my income. Common understandings. We basically talked about that. Just having as much in common as possible. You don't have to be the same as a person. You don't have to do everything the same way and think everything the same way. But I think just a general culture that you sort of come from and believe a similar belief systems, basically. Doesn't all have to be identical, but you need to have enough stuff to where you can go through the day without bumping into each other, bumping heads too many times. Her and your family. I personally think this is a big one. This can mean so many things too. This can mean what I said about her father being a plumber and having rental property. So I can look at that and I go, okay, this girl is coming from something. She's gonna, get that I'm trying to do something bigger, and I'm not just some bum trying to avoid having a job. Your family, it's the same way. How does this family interact, and how is that going to affect me? Are our families going to be able to get along with each other? Are they going to like me? Or is my family going to like her? I think this kind of stuff is a big deal. And again, not everything is... this isn't about like how much money does her family have or how much money does my family have and am I going to inherit something. This is just having a good support system to where you can do the best you can do. History. What is that even about? Probably just, what's the person's history in general. So, that's enough on all this, I think. I hope that this video, I feel like it's been very grueling. It feels rough on me. My eyes feel real tired. But I hope that it has at least something. I hope that it didn't go on too long. I'm just going to post it. We're going to see what happens. If it's too bad, I will delete it. And then we'll do episode 10.1 if we have to on a different topic. We probably just leave this one. Perhaps I should have done it a little more organized. But I kind of wanted just to kind of freestyle on it a little bit. Go off topic where I could. And just see what happens. One of my biggest goals with these videos is to not have them be hard. Not that I don't want them to be quality, but I don't want them to be hard. But y'all can start kind of let me know. You've gotten, this is the 10th video. Let me know what you think about them in general. What's the length you think would be good? Is this an okay format? I know I'm just sitting here. This camera's literally 1 foot from my face. I've got a dry erase board. I think a lot of videos where people have dry erase boards are so boring where they just stand in front of a dry erase board. I don't mean that to anybody if you have a dry erase board videos. I just kind of like it. I love dry erase boards for writing stuff on them, so I think it's just more of a reminder of me in the video. I really, truly want to know what your opinion is. I don't want to continue doing something if it's stupid and then people just tell me, yeah, man, keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job. This is interesting. I don't mind people being critical. And if you're mean to me, I might whine a little bit. But if it's, some sort of criticism that I can get something out of, I greatly appreciate it. But I'm also open to you telling me what it is that I'm doing that actually is good, right, whatever you want to call it. Why the videos are helpful to you so far, that type of stuff. I'm not looking for any pats on the back. I'm just looking at how to develop this channel. I don't need to always sit down in my little dirty little basement, but I just, for whatever reason, I feel like it's relatable. When somebody's sitting in some slick environment and there's a Ferrari behind them and all that kind of stuff, I think it can be a little hard for people to relate to. If you're some guy, I don't know. doing what I do, but not with the rental property, and you're doing something, and you might not have all that many people around you to talk to about stuff, and you're trying to figure out everything on your own. It can be so kind of like overwhelming, and you can feel like you're the only one doing this or that. So I think if you hear somebody like me say, well, I really never had any real jobs, but I just always wanted to try to figure out something that would work for me. I didn't want to go to a job every day. I just wanted to figure out something and then move in the direction to maybe buy a rental house. And so if you can hear my experiences that led up to me being able to do what I'm doing now, and if all goes right, what I'm doing now will look very tiny compared to what I'm kind of aiming at down the road. And I think that's another video I want to make, is me talking about sort of what my personal goals even are, because I can talk about what I'm doing, but if you don't know where I'm actually aiming, it might be a little tricky. In general, while we're on this video, right now what I'm mainly trying to do is just establish a foundational kind of income. I basically want to replace any income that I'd be making from some sort of a job. So like when I think of a normal guy's job, I think like 60 grand. That's sort of like just my number that pops up in my head. But then I think, any guy needs to make 100 grand is what I think. I say whoever the main person working is. I think you at least need to be making $100,000. I do not make $100,000. So like right now what I want to try to do is establish basically the working man's income totally from passive sources that's consistent. Not have some, epic month one time that somehow you made a ton of money, but I want it to just be a consistent passive income that it just doesn't change. I don't know how many, because people ask me all the time, they're like, how many rental houses do you want before you can retire? Well, one of my rental houses is $400, and I have another one's $1,000. So, I mean, that exact question might not really apply to me. It's more of like, I want several times more than what my cost of living is, just to cover any kind of thing that's going to happen. I want to be able to save some money, but I want to be able to invest a lot of money and then cover all of my costs along the way. Once I get to that point, then I kind of want to up things and kind of just get into a bigger level of what I'm doing now. I probably would no longer do anything like make and sell my tables or any kind of like chasing a dollar type stuff that I do now, like when I need a certain amount of money where I could try to hustle up some business real quick just to make some money because I might need to put a new roof on something. So who knows what that will look like down the road. For me, it'll probably be buying and selling houses, maybe doing some wholesaling, renovate a house, sell it, kind of flip a house. But, sometimes it might just be buying a house for a real good deal and then finding somebody else that wants to do it. And because I like spending my time working the deal more than renovating the house. So bringing other people into all this, I think, is also going to be an important thing at some point. I really am starting to get to that point now where I just need to involve more people, but kind of my mindset that's led all the way up to this point of being a little bit of a cheapskate is making it really hard for me to break free of that mindset. So I think before we get too far off topic, I'll end it there, and I'm going to post this video tomorrow, so in a handful of hours from right now. It'll take me a little bit to get this edited. In the meantime, or not in the meantime, once y'all watch this video, and if you made it to the end, let me know you made it to the end again. And check the links below. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you do that. I think that does something for me. If you're not subscribed, do so. Turn on your notifications to where you get updates when I post a video. And check out my other channels. The Homestead Craftsman, my first channel. Got another one called Square Inch, where I started building a tiny house. My Homemade Home channel. And that's about it. That's 4 or 5 channels, however many that was. I'll put the links for stuff in the description. I got my ebook as well, Buying Cheap Houses. Not just trying to sell you something. It's a very helpful book to a lot of people. Check the reviews on Amazon, and you can buy it off of my website as a PDF if you want to. The link to the podcast where you can buy it if you want to spend 99 cents for listening to something, again, that you can listen to on YouTube, is it's for sale on Sellfy, and that link will be down below. I'm getting tired. My voice is getting weak. Better go ahead and go. Thank you all for watching. See you next time.